Errata magazine. Adventure number 2. Right, so we're another 11 issues down and we're another adventure series completed. Whilst this hasn't had some of the glaring errors that I saw in the first adventure, there's still been a few that I found across the issues here and there. And I think less major errors too. There's just been a couple of issues here and there I've decided to nitpick, or just some queries I've had about some things I've read. But there are also a couple of issues I had no problem with, which is an improvement on the first series of encounters. And this might have come out a bit sooner, although I had to spend a lot of time researching stuff on the internet for some bits that aren't covered easily. Or the amount of time I spent just changing the font, not the font, changing the actual colour for the intro cover just to match the original D&D second box expert one, which I wonder if they're doing up with the dice, but that'll be something for a later time to look at. So anyway, let's get into the errors. So beginning with issue 12, nothing really wrong with that. It's more the spell booklet that came with it. We flick through there, we're going to get a series of detect spells in the book, and they all have the same sort of conditions almost, apart from the fact that on detect magic, they've missed out the fact it should have a range of self 30 feet sphere, just like all the other detect spells that are in there. And next up, issue 13, and for this we're just going straight to the encounter at the back for the problem. And for this we're going to meet the Dragonborn Necromancer Visera. As you can see, an actual named character with an actual stat block. However, in the actual adventure, she's introduced as a green Dragonborn. Yet, as a named character, why has she got red Dragonborn art? You know, that's a bit of an error there. She's clearly named, it doesn't say Dragon Necromancer, it's her, so why is the art wrong? And then the other thing about her being a named character, where we have the languages, it just says any 4 languages. Surely they should know what she speaks. Most other named characters already have the languages they speak listed rather than just that. Obviously, she'll speak Draconic as a Dragonborn, and Common, because pretty much everyone does who can speak. As a bonus too, one I'll say is Halfling, because obviously in the village there's at least one Halfling, so she probably learns that to communicate with them. And then for the 4th, I was stuck between either Orc or Elvish, just looking at all the nearby encounters. And I went with Orc, as she's more likely to encounter the Orcs, considering they've got the big tribe, whereas all the Elvish stuff's mostly to do with crypts and things. As we talk about the Halflings, here we have Harriet Littlefoot, and there's a stat block there. Now the main problem with this is she's listed as a medium humanoid, but she's a Halfling. It does say in the strength drain, you can see she's got the stats of a veteran, so they have literally just copied the entire veteran stat block. So the first thing that's wrong with that, obviously, yeah, as I've said, she's small because Halflings are a small size. So the speed should only be 25 feet, if that's true. And also, heavy crossbow should have attack to disadvantage, which isn't listed anywhere. But regardless of that, even if somehow she was a medium humanoid, the main thing is she's had strength drained, so only has strength 12, because it does say, oh, these are our current statistics. And one of the things about that is she's wearing splint armor. So if you're wearing splint armor, you need a minimum strength of 15, otherwise you lose 10 feet of speed. So she should only have speed 15 feet or 20 feet, depending on how you want to take the whole veteran stat block ability of her. But moving on from Harriet, we're going to go to an actual medium-sized creature, and we're going to go to our own Dragonborn introduced, which is Karkroth. An important thing to note is he's a soldier. So one thing is, soldiers should start with 10 GP. They've got listed 12 GP there. I'm not sure why, unless it was a copy and paste error. They've copied someone over, just replaced all the 10s or 12s for the hit dice. And the other thing is, because of the soldier background, actually he gets 5 javelins to start with. They've only listed 1. There should be another 4, because obviously they are thrown weapons, so you can lose them. Before I move on from the issue, one more thing about this. You notice the colour on the front of the adventure is gold, but the sequence goes red, gold, green, blue, red, gold, green, blue, red, gold, green, blue. So issue 13 should have a red cover. It doesn't, because it's wrong. As you see when we get to issue 14, which is also gold, every other issue follows a pattern except for 13, which is just going to annoy me. So we'll move on anyway. 14 and 15 we'll look at together because they are related in the issue, in the problem rather. So issue 14 introduces us these restless spirits in the encounter. And there's a couple of things that don't add up. As you can see, it's got passive perception 10, even though wisdom -4, and languages when there's no intelligence. Seems a bit odd, but if you turn over the page, you can see he's actually just got the same stat block as the Rug of Smothering. So they've messed up there and given it the wrong stat block. But luckily for us, we again encounter the rest of the spirits in issue 15, where they've corrected it. So you can see the stat blocks should be Strength 14, Dex 11, Con 13, Intelligence 8, Wisdom 10, Charisma 13. And then everything matches up then. The only other difference is originally they had a challenge rating of a half, then it's gone up to challenge rating 1. I'm not sure which is correct. I'm tempted to go with challenge 1 being the correct one, as the rest of this stat block's right. But I don't know where they've got half from because they haven't copied that off the rug. Unless what I'm thinking is if the challenge rating is 1, the rug had a challenge rating of 2. So when they've copied the rug over, it's just gone to a half somehow. I don't know. Other thing we get in the actual issue 14, it's going to say here, it comes with 3 more miniatures, our Barbarian, our Gnome Bard, and the Displacer Beast. But it actually came with 4 miniatures because it also came with the Ghoul Monster as well. So I'm not sure whether that was a last minute addition or not. Let's move on from that now, and now we're going to get to issue 16. And again, we're just going straight to the encounter to see what I've got a problem with this time. And again, it's going to be stat blocks. So first up, we've got our bandits here. You can clearly see they've actually hacked into the database. The armor class 112. So, I mean, there's no way you're going to defeat them. Obviously, it should be 12. Typo. The other one is Captain Harag. And you can see here, they've just copied his stat block over. And they've not changed some stuff. He's going to make 2 attacks with its Scimitar and 1 with his dagger. Annoyingly, they changed all the its to his, apart from that one. Which just irritates me slightly, because it's literally on the same line as the other his. So they've got to go in and change that one, and not the other. So it should be his Scimitar and his dagger. But before I continue ranting about that, let's go look at 17. Before I get into it, we're going to have a quick flashback to previous issues. So earlier in the magazine, when we had spellcasting, we first had spellcasting 3A, which made obvious because then you get spellcasting 3B. Then we get to issue 6, and issue 6 just came up with spellcasting 4. So great, magic items, that's just a 1-page thing. Until we get to this issue, suddenly we've got a spellcasting 4B and a 4C. So that should have been 4A. It's not major. Again, it's just me nitpicking at stuff that just slightly irritates me. Although this issue did have an index problem, because Displacer Beasts are listed as Monsters Law C, when actually Monsters are Law B in the law. So they've got that one wrong too. So this issue gets another character introduced, Zugan the Druid. But we only got one character sheet, the second level, because it had a little thing up there to go, oh, go create your own first level. Which is fine, no problem. It just annoys me then that in the actual spellcasting section, when it talks about the druids, the character creation bit for the druids, it says they compare their spells, wisdom plus druid. For example, our pre-generated character prefers 4. The only problem is, the only pre-gen we got is a level 2. So it actually gets to prepare 5 spells. As you can see, it's correctly listed on the character sheet. It's just me being nitpicky and annoyed again, but why couldn't they have put prepare 4 at first level rather than put in they prepare 4, because we haven't got the sheet for that. If we had both 1 and 2 like we did for the Barbarian, fair enough. It's just annoying me. Anyway, yes, so our druid is also from a hermit background. Now the hermit background is not a standard one, so it was a bit hard to do some research for it, and it took me a while, but I did research what the hermit should get to start with. So to start with, in the equipment for that, missing the backpack, missing the druidic focus, and also missing the scroll case that should have. Also instead, there's a random proficiency in woodcarver's tools. Now sure, second level, so would have had some ventures already, so perhaps they traded away all their backpack items to learn that proficiency. But since it's the first time I've used the character, and they haven't mentioned it anywhere else, I don't think so. I think they've just mistaked it up again. I'm just going to chalk it up to errors, copying stuff over. Because I imagine when they've got these, they've just got one character sheet, they copy it over and then just change the bits to keep a lot of the same. But as normal, I talk a bit too much, so let's keep moving on. Issue 18. And do you know what? I've got nothing to say about issue 18. I was fine with that. So instead we're going to go to issue 19, where we're just going to get a few printing mistakes that probably needed a bit of proofreading for the magazine. So first up, we've got encumbrance, and we've got our encumbered characters. They've got a nice little example here. And obviously they're going characters carry up to 5 times their weight in strength, so strength 13 carry 65. Then up to 10 times their weight, which is 650. Obviously they made a mistake and they've multiplied the wrong number, so that should be up to 130. They've just copied the wrong one to times by 10. And then we go to traps part 2. And down here they've got a couple of tables about them. One of the things you can see is how deadly are the things. The bottom table, damage severity by level. Is it a setback level trap? Is it a deadly level trap? Or is it a save DC level trap? Obviously that should be a dangerous, deadly trap. And again, they've just, looks like they copied the table and not changed it. And then what's next in this issue, you might ask? Well, that's going to be the Grell, who we find in our encounter at the end. And all this is they've given the Grell 2 passive perceptions. So it should be passive perception 14. They've just got an extra senses line on there. So that's not needed. Get rid of that. and it's perfectly fine. And from one encounter to the next, we'll move to issue 20, which is probably going to be the last encounter I have a problem with. I'm pretty certain, hopefully. And of course, this isn't like a proper error or anything. It's just an issue I've got with this. So the whole premise is you go to the mausoleum, you've got some skeletons that to fight. So on the way to the mausoleum, there's 3 skeletons. You can fight or you can avoid them. When you get to the mausoleum though, there's absolutely nothing listed in there. Like there's no monsters anywhere. That's it. You just get 3 room descriptions and then you get this. So when you're looking at the sensor, it says, oh, when the skeletons engage with the adventurers, the sensor magic activates. Then it's going to flare to life when you first roll initiative within the mausoleum. So the problem I get with that is, if you don't fight any skeletons, the sensor's magic isn't activated. So how can it flare to life? So after going through this all, I kind of get it. Eventually the party is going to interact with the sensor. So when they do that, the spectre appears, then you have to roll initiative, and then the fire appears to trap them in and the skeletons start getting summoned. The only problem I get with that though is the fact that the sensor is actually hidden away, and the main way you're going to find it is either searching all the coffins, or whenever it summons skeletons, it glows and reveals its location to people in the room when it summons skeletons in that room. So in my opinion, what's supposed to happen is the party meant to go in there, start fighting skeletons, and eventually they'll get to this room and see this keeps glowing green, summoning skeletons, then they find it, and then they release the spectre, but they're already fighting and trying to get there. What currently happens is they walk in, it's completely empty, especially if they didn't fight the skeletons on the road, walk around a bit, and then they could just walk off and go, no skeletons there. To me, it seems like there's supposed to be some enemies in there, and I don't know if there was enemies in there and they were removed to make it easier, or if the 3 skeletons you find on the road were the ones that were originally there and they got moved outside. Not thinking about it. Just to me, all I think you got to do is that line there, when the skeletons engage with adventurers, the sensor magic activates. Remove that. And you're just going to have, there's a sensor there that can deal with this. It flares to life as soon as you roll initiative, and then you follow the rest. When they touch it, a spectre leaps out. It doesn't help with the whole hidden thing though. And actually, it's probably better not to have the character roll initiative, and just when all the characters in the mausoleum, it flares to life. Or just have a random initiative count. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to work as it should do in my eyes. And the other thing that I've got with this is when you finish, you get your reward from Edgar that he promised you at the start, which is just a flat fee. But there's no mention of the 10 GP. Obviously at the start, it was 10 GP per skull, plus the additional reward from the mausoleum. So there's your reward from the mausoleum, your 200 or your 150. But where's your 10 GP per skull? What happens if they have to fight 50 skeletons? They're expecting about 500 gold. Although that's less to do with me, that's more to they can pick that up with the NPCs at the time, if they feel like it. But enough of that. Let's finally get to the rest of the issues. Issue 22, I had no problems with that. Again, another issue completely clear. So we'll just look at issue 21 for the last things I need to bring up. Firstly, let's get another nitpick, of course. If you go to reading the room, in the little subtext, rooms shouldn't be an interchangeable set of walls, it should say. That is annoying me. Just a bit of grammar there. And other than that, the issue was fine. So the only issue with that is, again, with the character sheet. So here we have our lovely Orc Paladin Oshog, who is a spy, or was a spy, comes from a spy background. So I had to do a bit more research on this as well, because Orc wasn't a standard class. And in fact, where I found it was in the Multiverse of the Monsters sourcebook, the info I needed. So as an Orc, she's going to get the Dark Vision, Relentless Endurance and Powerful Build, but should also have the Adrenaline Rush feature, which isn't there. I don't have the actual source book to confirm it, but everything I read says as an Orc should have Adrenaline Rush and it's not. Other than that, let's move on to the equipment stuff, as per normal. So as a Paladin, she's entitled to 2 martial weapons, which she's got, but she should also have either a simple weapon or 5 javelins. And I think they've messed up a bit here, and we'll get to that in a bit. I'm pretty certain she should have the javelins. Also, there's no backpack again. And she's also missing the spy background stuff. So there's no crowbar and there's no common clothes that should be there. But if we go back to about the weapons, looking at attack and spellcasting, she just had the 2 weapons listed. But the short sword's got the wrong stats. It should have 1d6 plus 4 piercing damage because of the strength. And it should be a martial weapon, not a simple. The actual stats there look to be the stuff for the javelin, if you were throwing the javelin. So I think they've just got it all mixed up and got the wrong stuff in. So as well as having the javelins, the short sword should have the plus 4 damage and be the martial weapon. Alright, and lastly, we're going to turn over just a quick look at the spells. And I think someone's been a bit biased against orcs and decided to make spellcasting harder. Because in the spell list, where we've got Detect Evil and Good, they've added a material component that shouldn't exist for that spell. And where they've got the compelled dual spell, they've added a semantic component, which again shouldn't exist. That should only be verbal, that should only be verbal and semantic. And there we go, that's Adventure 2 all done and dusted and laid out. As you can see quite clearly, there's a little band that's annoying me again. Otherwise, yeah, that's one of my nitpicks. I feel like for this lot, I've had a lot more nitpicks than I did before. Maybe it's because I've actually learned how to play a bit. Maybe it's a bit better than before, so I'm trying to nitpick because there's not a lot of problems. I think apart from that issue with the mausoleum, nothing else seemed really major. A lot of it's just kind of typos and it's quite obvious in places. There's only one or two big things. And then just a lot of me going, oh, typo, spelling mistake, copy error. Doesn't look right. Anyway, yeah, enough about that. We're going to move on. So up next, we're going to start moving to Adventure 3. Issue 23. Again, oh, gold to green, it works. Anyway, yeah, so issue 3 is coming next. We're going to level up our characters. And the majority of it seems to be the character sheets. So actually this issue is probably going to have the most errors for me to find. Whoopee. Anyway, enough about that. There's going to be a couple of links popping up to either go to the next episode about the magazine or the next one in this like off series. Otherwise, if you're still here, thanks for watching. Hope to catch you soon.